Hello, myself Sneha. Today I'll be talking about last two chapters of Lenin's book What is to be done. So basically in those two chapters he stated what is to be done, like uh, what are we going to do with the revolution. Like he talked about a newspaper, he talked about what should be the organization of the revolutionaries. So let's start by fourth chapter, in which the main theme was Lenin addresses the immaturity or primitiveness of the revolutionary movement in Russia and calls for the creation of professional, centralized and disciplined revolutionary organization to replace the immature and fragmented local circles. He said the primitiveness is immature, unorganized, and a revolutionary party is a need. He said the Vanguard party, which is basically the party which will teach the revolutionaries how the revolution should be done and will be going to happen, is basically taught by that Vanguard party. And he said we need to create one Vanguard party. Then he said what is primitiveness, as he is describing primitiveness as amateur. Then what is primitiveness? He said primitiveness, according to Lenin, refers to the amateurish, unorganized nature of the revolutionary movement. He laments that many revolutionaries are enthusiastic but lack experience, security protocols and long-term planning. He said the revolutionary movements which is taken place by some revolutionaries, they may be enthusiastic or they have very hot blood, but they lack experience, security protocols and long-term planning. We can't do things with short-term planning which will give the positive result for short term but will not benefit us for the long term. So he said this is not good and we need organized structure for that. Then he said then Lenin gives an example for revolutionary which is localized and unaware of activities outside their own town. The revolutionaries are unaware of what are the activities happening other than their town. Then he says disorganized in communication. They don't know what is going between them. They don't listen to each other. They just do whatever they think of doing. Then easily infiltrated or crushed by the police, the Okranas. He gave the example. Then more like reading clubs than agents of revolution. They are like small clubs formed, but not a revolution will happen with those clubs. So we need a party. Then he said, and then he had a one concern, which is this lack of professionalism leads to a cycle of arrests, failures and repeated amateur beginnings. Instead of expanding and learning from past mistakes, local groups often vanish after a police raid. So he said those revolutionaries often get arrested and which break them into pieces. And he said this just only stops us from doing revolution, and which is a failure of beginnings. A consecutive line of failures of beginnings leads to demotivation to around the people, which is not good. So he said let's stop doing those small revolutionary groups and make a revolutionary party. Then in second chapter of fourth chapter of second part, that is Lenin connects primitiveness and economism. Lenin connects primitiveness to economism, the idea that workers should focus only on economic struggles. Economists discouraged political agitation and saw professional revolutionary organization as elitist. Lenin's argument, by focusing solely on immediate demands, economists undermine the long-term revolutionary cause. They believe that the working class will organically rise to political consciousness in both naive and dangerous. Is both naive and dangerous. Without a strong and external party force to guide, educate, and organize, the movement becomes vulnerable and directionless. He basically said what I described earlier, that when we don't have a party, an organization that we can talk about or we can just describe, this makes the group which have been formed for a revolution, makes it directionless or makes it vulnerable, which makes it difficult to go further for the revolution. It may give a temporary change or temporary time period will be very good, but this doesn't give a chance for revolution to grow, which is very problematic. So he said we need a group of members for political party so that they can guide the whole group of revolutionaries and give them experience, give them teachings, give them learnings for how to form a good revolutionary party or form a group and form an organization so that the revolution can happen. So for third part, that is the scope of organizational work. Lenin emphasizes that revolutionary must think nationally and strategically, not just locally. He said that revolutionaries should not only think that we are like compelled between those four boundaries of that city or our state. We need to think outside of that. We can't just think locally. We need to think strategically. He said that. Then the key points of the chapter were there must be continuity between past and future revolutionaries. Revolutionary work must not depend on spontaneous upsurges like strikes or public outrage. Lenin advocates for an underground network of committed full-time revolutionaries who are trained, disciplined, and ready to act. He basically said in those key points that we should not do some small kinds of protest or small kinds of upsurges. We need to do a revolution. So remember to think long-term plans, not a short-term goal. So this is what he said. He said to make a network of committed full-time revolutionaries, not those part-time revolutionaries who are basically working for them at a day and working for revolution at night. So we can't do that. We need a full-time revolutionary who will be basically giving his blood and sweat to the revolution. Then he gave an example, which is Lenin likens the current disorganized state to building a house with no architect, where people randomly pile bricks without a plan, inefficient and fragile. He basically gave an example of building a house without an architect. He is relating it to a revolutionary without a revolutionary party. He said building a house without an architect is same as that, which is inefficient and fragile. It can be broken easily. So he said that. Then in fourth part, he said the character of the economic struggle, factory reports, and the strike movement. Here Lenin critiques the way factory reports are used. Economists publish reports of poor working conditions as exposure literature, while useful, Lenin says, these must be linked to political causes, censorship, unjust courts, police abuse, etc. His argument, economic grievances must be politicized. Workers must be shown how their factory conditions are tied to autocracy. Example, a strike at a factory is not just about wages, but about the fact that workers have no legal right to organize, no freedom to speech, and no political representation. Now, the character of the economic struggle and the strike movement, he said, Lenin says they must be linked. Okay. He said those economic conditions of factory members or factory people must be shown in on internet. This can't be shown just as exposure literature. We need it through the media. We need the representation through the media. Workers must be shown at what they are facing at the factory, not just what economically they are having those low wages and all. No, we need to show what they are facing at the factory level, how the conditions are there, and how they are compelling with those conditions. We need to show that. And so we need to shut down censorship, unjust court, and police abuse. Then he's concluded. Then the conclusion of chapter was Lenin insists on the urgent need to move beyond amateur circles, form a centralized, secretive professional organization, train full-time revolutionary, create an all-Russian structure capable of weathering repression and leading the masses. So at last the chapter 4 has ended with which he gave some key points, which is a need of a revolutionary party, then and then to remove the unorganized circles, amateur circles of revolutionaries. Then he said we need an organization. Then he said we need a structure capable of weathering repression and leading the masses. We need a structure which can handle repression and which can lead the masses. This is it for chapter 4. Now let's begin chapter 5, which is the plan for an all Russia political newspaper. So in this chapter, the Lenin proposes the creation of a regular all Russian Marxist newspaper to serve as a central organ of the revolutionary movement, not just for spreading information but also for organizing the struggle. Then for the part 1 of this chapter 5, which was who was offended by the article Where to Begin. Lenin had previously written an article which was Where to Begin, outlining his vision of party newspaper. Some revolutionary mocked or dismissed the idea. So this is so what we can say, so funny that some revolutionaries are also like mocking Lenin's idea, which is in his article was Where to Begin. Then he said they said was a newspaper is too narrow, too focused on propaganda. It's impractical under czarist censorship. They criticized it for the newspaper is too narrow and too focused on a propaganda, which is they are basically saying newspaper can't give a lot of information which is not needed. We can't just waste money for just small things. The criticizers are saying that to Lenin. Now what Lenin said for them was a newspaper is more than just a communication tool. It is a scaffolding for a broader revolutionary structure. Now he quoted something: a newspaper is not only a collective propagandist and a collective agitator, it is also a collective organizer. So what by that Lenin said, newspaper is not just a communication tool. It is not just a communication tool, it is a broader revolutionary structure which can lead to change the mindset of people, so that they can propose a revolution. They can shake the structure of present government. Now and the quote was saying that a newspaper is not only a collective propagandist. By newspaper we just not only give a propaganda but a collective agitator which makes the people bring together, which makes people together. And it is also a collective organizer, which makes people together and lead them to a one goal, to a goal which is very necessary for revolution, that everyone thinks minded. Can a newspaper be a collective organizer? That is a part 2 of chapter 5, which is Lenin explains how a newspaper can spread political education among workers and peasants, create a sense of unity and common purpose among geographically scattered revolutionary cells, offer examples of resistance, expose injustice, and report local struggles to a national audience. Example, he compares the newspaper to the nervous system of the party, allowing each limb of the movement to know what the others are doing. He also uses the example of German Social Democratic Party, which used newspapers as central tools to unify workers across cities and regions under a common cause. He gave enough examples for why a newspaper should be a nervous system of revolutionary structure. Now in part 3 of chapter 5, he described what type of organization do we require. He said what type of organization do we need in part 3. This is where Lenin lays out his vision for the Bolshevik party. Key features of the organization he proposes, which was centralized leadership, a national framework, full-time professional revolutionaries, distribution networks for underground press and literature, clear division of responsibilities and chain of command. Critique of localism. Lenin says small disconnected groups are inefficient, reactive and constantly rebuilding from scratch. He insists that only a strong central organization can withstand police repression and coordinate effective revolutionary activity. Importance of secrecy. Because of state repression, the organization must be clandestine and disciplined, not open, public or democratic in structure. He said we need a small and secret system which can work against the government underground and have that secrecy, so that we can just shake the structure and lead to a new structure and make a new structure. This is what he said. Now for the conclusion of chapter 5, Lenin calls for the establishment of an all Russian underground newspaper as the foundation of party organization. The use of this medium to train cadres, unify ideology and build revolutionary momentum. The replacement of spontaneous local disorganized efforts with a strategic national-wide revolutionary network. Now, this is what he gave in his book, in his last 2 chapters, which was 4th and 5th. And by that we all know that he was kind of successful in getting the revolution in Russia, in USSR, which was a revolution in 1917, Bolshevik Revolution, which happened and destructured the Tsar and came up with a new government, which was kind of like, we can say, he gave what he wrote. His theory was practical enough to get the revolution in Russia, in USSR. So that's all from my side. Thank you.